Ty, what's the biggest question mark about the Bruins going forward into the playoffs that does not relate to the goalies?
I would have to say what is your defensive, what's your ideal six right now? Like, we've seen the last two games, it's been Lindholm and McAvoy together in the top pairing. It's a weapon, but then you watch them when those guys are on the bench and you're like, ooh, this is not a deep enough roster for that. Does Shattenkirk get in there? Does Grzelcyk, we talked about Grzelcyk earlier, like, does he lose his footing on a roster spot? Mason Lohrei, he's played just 3 games since March 14th. I don't think he's done enough to make the conversation interesting in terms of him getting a spot for game 1. Then you have Wotherspoon and Peak. Like what's happening with all these guys here? And how does it all shake out for you? I think that's the biggest question mark because
you think about all the years they've been in the playoffs here and all the good teams they've had. This is the most uncertainty going into the playoffs with your back end. We've talked about the goalies, but they are kind of connected to the goalies because it's how they play in front of them.
Right.
But you can name all 6 defense. You can name all your defensemen off the top of your head.
Who's a lock? It's Carlo, McAvoy, Lindholm.
Of course, McAvoy, yeah.
And then that's it. That's it for locks.
Size.
You don't know.
Right.
And that's, we talked about this last week. Like, Lindholm's got to have a good playoff. He's had 2 playoffs here. One not so great and one incomplete because of the concussion.
Especially if you get a physical team.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, we talked about this. Like, they're going to get probably Toronto or Tampa. 2 teams that can score, and they score in a variety of ways. Toronto is a run and gun, really good. Like, they got quick shots with Marner, Nylander, Tavares, Matthews, as we know. Matthews has 60-something goals now. That's a good team, right? Like, your defense has to be ready for that challenge. And then Tampa's a different kind of cat. Tampa's, they got guys that go to the front of the net. They cause chaos. It's a bit like Florida. When you get beyond that bottom of the top of the roster there, like, they have a bunch of guys who are big bodies who get to the front of the net. So their defense has to be stout. It has to be, that game against Nashville was impressive. They got bailed out by the goaltender a lot too, though.
And you like the Florida trip too. Those 2 wins down there, but neither team really showed in the Tampa game, right? Was that one?
Yeah, and the Tampa game was weird. We talked about, like, it was just second leg of a back-to-back. Tampa's first game from a big West Coast road trip. Like, just didn't feel like either team really had it. What I will say is I do think the Bruins have played Tampa better these last few seasons, but still a team that I want nothing to do with in the playoffs. They're 9-1-1 their last 11 games.
Jesus.
Vasilevsky looks great right now. Like, they're surging at the right time. But at the same time, I don't know. Feels like the Bruins are going to have to go through one of these teams at some point. Maybe it's good to get it in the first round and see if that is a Kickstarter for them as a franchise, as a team in the playoffs.
And then to your point on the defense, too, Grzelcyk, he's a guy that could either be sitting or he could be playing with McAvoy.
It's pretty scary that, like, his options are, he's playing on the top pair or he's a scratch. It's like, that is a wild variation there. Like, not many guys have that to their name.
Those wild opposite ends of the spectrum for what he could be doing. So I know what you said going back to, like, the last segment when you said if he is a healthy scratch and he's not playing, what a wasted opportunity to have moved him at the deadline. I always just sort of assume that someone's also going to get hurt.
Oh, for sure.
Right? And so it may not prove to be, if he's a healthy scratch at the beginning, it may prove that as a depth piece, it was valuable. How many times you lose a defenseman in a playoff series?
Oh, at this team constantly.
Right.
They'll lose him before the games even begin. That's how it's gone here.
He'll stub his toe on his way to the game.
He's a pretty good 7th D.
I would say this is that, like, for me, it's not about the deadline as much as it was the summer. There were rumors last summer that Grzelcyk was available and that teams were interested. And then when we asked Don Sweeney about that, he got really defensive and was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't make it up rumors. Maybe you made up rumors. And I was like, all right.
Is that kind of his MO? That's how he operates.
It is to a degree, but he was very defensive about it, which, like, when he gets very defensive, I'm like, oh, so it is true. Like, that's kind of how it feels to me. Like, but that'd be a waste of time. Like, because that's $3.6 million that you could have used last summer for this or for that. And so that's why it'd be a waste of time if you go through that whole process of him playing almost the entire season on the top pairing, and then he's a scratch in game 1. Like, that's just a waste of time. Doing the same thing over and over again? Why? You could use that money. Really could use that money. So that's why I would hate that.